So now we fast forward a week for live late night analysis, the night of the leaked release. Charlie, it's February 24th right now. It's 10:34 p.m. Pacific time. We've been talking about Mt. GOX, and I figured it probably was good to get your thoughts on it since you seem to have some information. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's about 1:30 in the morning. I'm having a drink. It's been a long day.
So tell me about that. How has this long day been?
It's been tough. I've been on the phone with a lot of people from friends in Austria and Australia and the Caribbean and California and New York, trying to calm people down and give whatever information I can out. The Mt. GOX withdrawal thing really got me angry. And the fact that Mt. GOX blamed the Bitcoin protocol and played the blame game pissed off a lot of us, including Gavin, who wrote a blog post about it. And I guess we may have been naive and we may have not seen the signs, or I guess felt that it was better to believe that Mt. GOX wasn't falling apart than to believe they were. And all the information that came out today, it's all unverified at the moment. We don't know. We don't know what's true and what's not true. The market's definitely reacting. The price of Bitstamp is down to $400 right now. Who knows how low it'll go? It's a scary night. The scariest part is that so many friends and family had funds in Mt. GOX. People are sending me messages that they were going to use, the 10 or 14 Bitcoins they had to pay for tuition. And I feel bad for the guys who lost thousands of coins, but I feel worse for the people who lost 10 to 20 Bitcoins.
To be clear, we are talking about something that is very much not confirmed at this point, and this is based off of a paper, off of a PDF that was shared that claims to be an internal strategy document that basically details the reforming of Mt. GOX. Is that correct?
Yes. So
okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of what's in the document coincides to the information that I had already known over the past few days.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I agree with you. It does correspond to some of the information that I have too, like the rebranding thing. One of the things that's interesting about this is that Mt. GOX is rebranding towards a brand that is just GOX. And I thought that was a little strange at first because because they only bought the domain actually a couple of days ago. And the guy talking about it says that he actually approached Mt. GOX about them buying it. So it's not like it was even their idea.
I think that they chose that domain name for better or lack of a better one to choose from. A few days ago, I was on your podcast and I said, Mt. GOX guys, if you're listening, this is what I think you should do. Change your name, totally rebrand everything, new exchange, new everything. Remember I said that?
Yeah.
One of the things I said also on your podcast was that I called to the foundation to get more involved in Mt. GOX and to physically go to Tokyo. Do you remember me saying that?
Yes, I do. And actually, I was going to play it along with this because I figured this would kind of be an addendum to it.
And I said that. And as soon as I got off the call, I emailed the founding members of the Bitcoin Foundation. Now, it's true that half of the board members now are part of the founding member team. So I emailed all the founding members, including Peter Vicenis, myself, Patrick Merck, Roger Veer, Gavin, and Mark and Gonzag, and I think one other person. So 7 founding members, and I emailed all and John Matonis. And I said, guys, let's have a call Sunday night because we need to figure out what our strategy is here. We need to all be on the same page. And if you, as a board, need to have a vote on Monday, then you need to have a vote on Monday. But let's kind of all be on the same page here. Through all of this, I've kind of had Mark's ear. Mark and I worked together very closely in the BitInstant days early on. And when very few people knew about Bitcoin, Mark and I became friends. And I know his wife, and I told you I know his family and everything. And I never thought him to be a scammer or a fraud. Maybe I did, but it was very hard for me to believe because when you know someone personally, when you play with their children, when you eat dinner with their family, it's hard to think that they're a fraudster, right? It's hard. It's hard to have that in your head. Really difficult. And I really struggled because when you think of people that are scammers or fraudsters, you say these are guys that are fleeing, that are in the Cayman Islands or whatever, and they're all over the place, and they're not real people, and they're
right. Mark wasn't going anywhere. He's stable, and he, like you said, he has a family and he has something to lose. I completely agree with that. Can we talk about the information in this document that you say corresponds with information you have? Because I'd be curious to compare notes on that. Let me take a sec here and pull it up. Hang on.
Call this founders meeting, and we got on a call. Usually it's just Gonzag on this call. Mark's legally allowed as a founding member to have a proxy. And during this call, it was all of us, including Mark, Gonzag, and Roger Veer, sitting in Mt. Gox's offices. And on that call, the board was still very kept out of the dark on what was going on. But from the kind of the words that was exchanged, we garnered that Mt. Gox, by stepping down from board seat of the foundation and having Roger there as an advisor, and the word NDA being thrown around, and the word rebranding being thrown around, and the word resignation being thrown around, we all decided that what we were going to assume from this meeting was that Mark was deciding to step down from Mt. Gox, and that new management was being involved, and that Roger was involved somehow in bringing together a possible new buyer to Mt. Gox, and that some sort of rebranding or a renewal of Mt. Gox was taking place on this Sunday night. And now today's Monday night, today's Tuesday morning / Monday night, just for those who are listening. So this is 24 hours later. That all took place, and we kind of all left that call happy because Mark stepped down from the foundation, which was a very honorable move, and he was stepping down from Mt. Gox. And we all assumed that buyers were being involved and that Mt. Gox was solvent, because who would buy a company that was insolvent, and that everything would be okay. And that's what we understood from Sunday night. And then Monday comes along and this document's been released. And I was the first person on Twitter tweeting to the 2-bit idiot, the guy who, Ryan, who actually released the first blog post. And I was the first person saying, dude, prove who you are. Prove that this document exists. Prove yourself, because this is very detrimental to the community. And I called him out on it. And he actually called my cell phone. And turns out I actually knew who this guy was. We had been speaking before, but he never told me that this is who he was. And he showed me the document. And unfortunately, now I'm inclined to believe that this document is real.
Let's talk about that. I'm looking at the document right now. It is the crisis strategy draft, and it has both the old Mt. Gox logo on it, sort of faded in the background, and the new Gox logo on it, which is a mountain. I confirmed that this branding is actually branding that they've been working on. So the branding is, in fact, legitimate at first glance. And it appears to, at this point, also only be internal. So that does lend some credibility to this in my eyes. It's a kind of strangely worded document in a lot of places. Really, it seems to be taking a lot of responsibility. And that's something that I've never seen Mt. Gox do. Oddly enough,
On that note, on the note that I do have Mark's ear, I said, Mark, the draft just surfaced. Problem is, if you blame Bitcoin again, the core users will all hate you, and the media will report Bitcoin is broken on your word. It's shitty advice, Mark, you have to receive, but I think it's true. I've always been honest with you. And he said, I know.
Okay, and so this was you telling him that he has to resign?
No, this is a few hours ago, me telling Mark that you have to take responsibility for your issues and blame Bitcoin.
I think that's plausible. The strange part to me is that this seems to have come about really fast. It just seems like this is, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
What do you mean? Which part?
Well, I just mean there was a time frame. I mean, I guess this does look like it was put together for right now. It says now to February 25th. So today is February 24th. So that implies again that this document was written, just days ago, because
this document was written last week.
It was written last week.
Yeah.
Okay. And the time frame on the Gox.com purchase would have been 3 days ago. I guess that does make sense if we're talking about a deal that started being made, like a week or two ago. Okay, yeah, that's plausible too. It reads like a quickly written document. Do you have any comments on, is there anything else in here that's making you think this is proprietary information only? The fact that it's on here is a sign.
People are saying that the document is poorly written in bad English, and that's just because I think the person who wrote it was Gonzag, who his English is not that good.
This corresponds with kind of how you know that they operate.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think this is real?
Unfortunately, I do.
Let's talk about that for a second. One of the problems I've had with Ryan coverage of this issue is that he was really hyperbolic. He basically said this is the end of Bitcoin. And that seems like it's patently not the case to me. It seems like this is a system that doesn't have things like bailouts simply cleaning itself out. And yeah, it's going to suck for people. Like you said, people have money in there, and that's a painful thing. But at the same time, Mt. Gox has had problems for years. And so at some point, don't they have to fail? Don't they have to go away in order to do this?
If they went down when no one had money in there, then that's one thing. But the fact that they went down when people had money there, that's the worst part.
Well, I agree with that, but isn't this the point? People are going to say about this, as they're already saying, that this is the end of Bitcoin. That Bitcoin has been destroyed, it's been proven, blah, blah, blah. And we know that those things aren't true. Bitcoin isn't about Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox is the weakest part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And really, they've been out of their league for years. They've just had enough momentum that they haven't had to actually recognize that fact.
People that are selling Bitcoin right now are the ones who are in it short and who are scared and who have too much to lose. I haven't sold one Bitcoin. In fact, I don't even have a trading account anywhere to sell any Bitcoin. And I'm assuming that you haven't sold any Bitcoin either. And most of the people I know haven't been selling either.
Right. No, I've actually been buying, like a lot of people. I intentionally put myself in risk in Mt. Gox because I kind of just figured that this is another continuation of the problems that they've always had, which is that they're slower than everybody else to do everything. But that's the thing, is that this isn't a complete wipe. This isn't everybody in Mt. Gox has lost everything. They're saying here that they're going to take a 1 month to restructure and then come back, and that they're fixing all the problems that I've actually had is my primary complaint.
The problem with that is if you look at their assets, it's 30%, 20%, I don't know of what they actually owe everyone of the customer deposits. That's the scariest part.
Okay, let me look at these numbers for a second. I hadn't looked at those.
So they had their assets are 32 million USD plus 2,000 Bitcoin. What's 2,000 Bitcoin in current price?
Wait a second. They only have 2,000 Bitcoin is what?
I forget, it's $1 million. So they have $33 million, right? But their liabilities look like it's more like $55 million plus 700 plus another $150 million worth. You're talking about not even 20% they have.
This document implies that they have no cold storage wallets.
They said that their cold storage wallet was leaked. The whole thing was leaked.
The whole thing was leaked. Okay, let's talk about leaking, because I'm very curious about this particular
This is my
issue.
biggest skeptical part of the whole thing. The math does not add up.
Yeah.
David Perry from Coding in My Sleep and I have spent hours, a few hours ago, going through the numbers, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. I'll read you what our analysis is. This is what we're thinking.
Okay. I was going to say, what do you feel about, do you have an interest in pulling in David Perry to the conversation?
But yeah, essentially this was our analysis. We said, we both find it, at first, I started to believe that this was true before he did. And he was trying to convince me that it can't be true because of the numbers. The sheer numbers don't make any sense, right? The basic math, just from in our heads, we figured out, okay, 740,000 Bitcoins was 750, whatever, 744,000 Bitcoins since malleability became known in 2011, right? That's about 20,000 Bitcoins per month. Figure 675, 680 Bitcoins per day. Even at the current prices, that's over $300,000 per day. That's just not the kind of money that you misplace and don't notice.
Seriously.
Even if we give the hacker credit and suggest that they've been doing it since the day Gox opened, the first day that Gox opened, that's still $250,000, $250,000 per day. In all fairness, the hackers could have probably taken a lot more coins when they were less valuable and dialed it back now that the USD per coin is higher. Figure like it wasn't just a specific amount per day. But it still works out to an average at about 409 coins per day if they started the day Gox opened up shop. Even when the coins were 5 cents, that's still almost $1,000 per month their books didn't balance by. And I know that the Japanese Financial Service Authority was auditing your books monthly. We're talking about 6% of all coins in existence, or 10 times the amount of money in any known Bitcoin address. If they've stolen that much money over that time, I'm just thinking the law of average has to kick in. And then you're buying the median market price for the entire 4-year span, which is like what, $90 per coin, $95 per coin, at a daily take of like $48,000. So if they stole $40,000 worth of BTC for GOX every day for 4 years, you arrive at 744,000 Bitcoin. And no one can say that they've stolen the bulk of it right at the start, because that amount of Bitcoin didn't even exist at the time.
The idea that they could have had their entire cold storage system exhausted due to a leak in their accounting system, because really that's what we're talking about when it comes to this hot wallet leak theory, is that because of a mismatch in the accounting, the cold storage transfers were overfunding the hot wallet or something like that. That really seems to be a weak point. And just the idea that they simply could have had that much stolen, literally their entire stock of Bitcoin stolen without knowing about it. I got to imagine that at some point in their security chain, somebody has to spot check a paper wallet and discover that, there's nothing here. And on none of the other systems either. I mean, right?
Doesn't make any sense.
I appreciate that human incompetence really can reach incredible bounds, but this seems beyond.
I ran a company. I know exactly what it feels like to be not in control of your finances. It's difficult. You're moving so much money around that you have no idea what's happening. But to lose that kind of money, we were doing $600,000 a day in volume at BitInstant. If we had lost even $1,000, we would have known. We may not have known how much money we were making or losing on one given day, but we still balance our books at the end of the month. We had some sort of hold on it. Mt. Gox was 20 times more funded and had a team that was a lot older, more experienced, and much larger than my team at BitInstant. I didn't even have a CFO. I was the CFO. That's how much it tells you that how bad it was.
Another part of this plan is that Mark Karpeles is going to step down. He's been the CEO since he purchased it from Jeb McCaleb 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So they purchased it 4 years ago. He's been the CEO from that point. Really, he feels more like an engineer to me. He feels like a technical guy who's sort of avoiding confrontation. And so that kind of makes sense to me. What I don't understand is why
there are things that we're not being told. There are missing pieces. And the missing pieces are showing us that this whole thing doesn't make sense. And we're going to come to conclusions that probably with the missing pieces, our conclusions are wrong. There are things that we don't know. And honestly, we would have never known about this. Because if this document didn't leak, I'm hoping that Mt. Gox would have gotten a buyer. The buyer would have recapitalized Mt. Gox or recapitalized it enough to continue being a Ponzi scheme. Because if you look, and I hate to use that word loosely, but if you look at the past, if they really didn't have all this money, Mt. Gox was being a Ponzi scheme. They were delaying withdrawals, right? And they're delaying withdrawals because they needed to wait for money to come in. And that's what essentially a Ponzi scheme is. They probably would have been recapitalized enough, even a few million, to be able to speed up withdrawals a little bit and give people their, the Bitcoins that they wanted back.
I think that I have people, it's really funny. People are freaking out. I have people who are telling me that they have their funds for their startup kept in Bitcoin, and they're like, I got to sell it all now to make sure that I don't go down with the ship. And these are people who believe in the vision, and who understand that what's going on right now is not going to be the end. And yet there's this fear that because the media is going to see this failure, they're going to crucify Bitcoin. I'm not that concerned about that. Like, I haven't sold any. I'm intentionally exposing myself to risk, and I'm not sure if that's going to wind up paying off for me. But at the same time, this feels like it's nothing but a transitory problem, because this will go away. This will eventually end.
If everyone sells Bitcoin today and there's only 2 Bitcoins left in existence, and you and I, Adam, decide to start our own financial institution, one in California and one in New York, and we decide to use the Bitcoin infrastructure and use those 2 Bitcoins still in existence to be able to settle money between our 2 financial institutions, that already gives reason for Bitcoin to succeed and be worth money.
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely right on that. Again, it's about the actual service that you can provide with it. I've heard you give the poker chip with wings analogy. I think that's a really good one, because that's the intrinsic value of Bitcoin. It's whatever you can do with Bitcoin versus what it would cost you to do it with something else, and how much extra time it would take to do it with something else.
Exactly.
So those things are all still exactly true. It's frustrating because you just have to have a long-term time frame where you can sit through this sort of short-term nonsense where individual actors do things that then makes us all look bad.
People are really pissed at me right now.
Yeah, I bet people are pissed at you right now. But again, you're kind of personalizing this, and I think that that's probably a mistake. You responded to him in a way that was, I think, appropriate with skepticism, and we still don't know if this is legit. It's hard to tell when you got truth mixed in with lies, and that really is what this feels like to me, because there are parts of it that work, but there are other parts of it that don't really make any sense.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.